Yeshivas Nefesh, revival of the soul. Then we put Muran in the beginning, number 31. One must be very stubborn in serving God. Understand this well, anyone who desires embarking upon the service of God, even the lowliest person, must endure countless advances and backslides and all types of falls and failures. Sometimes one is even intentionally driven away from serving God, and endless self-encouragement is required. Sometimes the only way one can encourage oneself and maintain one's resolve is through pure stubbornness, extremely great stubbornness. Remember this well, for you will need this very much. 32. No, all these falls, backslides, and confusions must inevitably be endured before one can enter the gates of holiness. All the true tzaddikim and God-fearing people went through all of this. 33. If you are extremely distant from God and it seems to you that you literally betray God every single moment, know that every single move that someone as gross as yourself makes to sever himself from his materiality, even the slightest movement to separate from one's physicality and draw close to God, is extremely great and precious to God. In this way one runs thousands upon thousands of miles in the upper world. Number 34, the most important thing is to strengthen oneself with joy, with all the varieties of advice concerning this, for sadness is very harmful, therefore one must make maximum effort to distance oneself from and drive away sadness and depression, whether by searching for and finding one's remaining good points, or through the fact that one was not created a non-Jew. Generally, the only way to cheer oneself up is through humor and silliness. 30 and 35. No, a person must cross a very narrow bridge in this world, and the most important thing is never to fear. Number 36, by the standard of God's greatness and His supreme exaltedness, the slightest movement or glance inappropriate to God's glory deserves to be punished accordingly, but God is abounding in mercy, and the whole world is filled with mercy, and He greatly desires the world. Therefore, my beloved brother, you the reader, my heart and soul, be very strong and courageous, and trust in God. He will not abandon you. Everything you are enduring is for your good. Rely on His limitless, abundant mercies, for God is very great. There is no limit to His greatness. Everything will ultimately be transformed to good, and sins transformed to merits. Only be strong and courageous. 37. Possessing an evil inclination is a great benefit, for then one can serve God specifically with the evil inclination. That is to overcome the passion of the evil inclination and to divert its power into serving God. Without an evil inclination, one's service has no value. This is why God allows the evil inclination to overwhelm a person so thoroughly, and especially one who truly desires to draw close to God. Although its surging and overwhelming brings a person to what it brings, to many severe sins and blemishes, it is all worthwhile to God for the sake of the smallest movement one makes to flee while being intensely overwhelmed by the evil inclination. This is more precious to God than one who serves Him 1,000 years. Without an evil inclination, all the worlds were only created for the sake of man, whose entire greatness and importance is only on account of his having such an evil inclination that he overcomes. Therefore, the more that it rises against a person, the more every slightest movement one makes against it is precious to God. God Himself helps a person with this, as the verse says. God will not abandon him in its hand. Number 38, the evil inclination constantly knocks and entices a person, even if one ignores it and turns one's back on it. It knocks again, a second time, a third, a fourth, and so on. But if one is strong-willed and stubborn against the evil inclination and completely ignores it, it then departs and goes away. The same applies to the thoughts that come to a person in prayer and confuse him. A thought comes to confuse a person repeatedly again and again, and one must be strong not to pay it any attention. Number 39, when a person enters a high service, such as drawing close to the true tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman, one may specifically then experience an emission. One should not be despondent because of this, for this is sometimes a sign that one has drawn close to holiness, and sometimes it is a great benefit. 40 has said there is absolutely never any cause for despair. The very perceiving oneself as being very far from God is itself cause for one to encourage oneself, for one is at least aware of one's distance. One could be so distant that one is not even aware of one's distance. So since one is aware of one's great distance, even when it is a fact, the very fact that one is aware of one's distance is itself valued by God. For this alone, one should encourage oneself and strengthen oneself as much as possible. 41, even simple people referred to as prostakim, even wicked people and even non-Jews, all receive vitality from the Torah, thus even a simpleton who cannot learn, or one who is in a location where one cannot learn, also receives vitality from the Torah. Therefore one must strengthen oneself in fear of heaven to whatever extent one can, even when one ceases from Torah study. Or one cannot learn, or one who cannot learn, all of them receive vitality from the Torah in a hidden manner, through the great tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman, who sometimes behaves with simplicity. Number 42, even one who has fallen extremely low and is lying in the utter depths of hell still has great hope through the truly great tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman. Through him everyone can receive vitality from holiness, regardless of the location. Therefore there is absolutely no cause for despair. Whatever the circumstances, even if one has fallen to a very low place, one strengthens oneself as one is, one still has hope of returning to God. The most important thing is, from the belly of hell I cried out, for even a cry from the utter depths of hell is never lost. One must cry out and never give up crying out, but continue to cry out and plead before God, regardless of circumstances, until God gazes down and sees from heaven. Even in the utter depths of hell, one can draw near to God. 44. If you believe that it is possible to damage, believe that it is possible to despair. If you believe that it is possible to damage, believe that it is possible to repair. Part 2, number 1. One may be already near the gate of holiness, but turns back because the evil inclination has overwhelmed him, and does not know and does not allow one to enter the gate. One thus loses heart and retreats entirely. This is how the evil inclination works. When it sees that a person is approaching the gate of holiness and is about to enter, it surges with very great force. Therefore one needs very great determination against it, to hold one's ground and not desert one's place, and not to pay attention to the falls, the backslides and confusions one is enduring. Rather one must strengthen oneself greatly to overcome it, and do what one can in the service of God. Over the course of time and with God's help, one will surely enter the gate of holiness. For God is abounding in mercy and greatly desires our service. And know that all attempts one makes to separate oneself, however slightly, from one's materiality, draw closer to God's service, are gathered together and united to come to one's aid in one's time of need. Such as when one endures hardship or crisis, there is a tree upon which grow leaves, and every leaf grows 100 years, and it can be assumed that during those 100 years the tree endures very much, but after the 100 years it blasts out a great sound like a cannon. The meaning of the parable is self-explanatory. Number 2, one must do one's best to strengthen oneself in the service of God, regardless of one's present spiritual situation, and depend on God's limitless mercies. God will certainly not abandon a person, no matter how much one has transgressed. The past is gone, and the main thing is to desist from now on, from doing bad from now on. Refrain, at the very least, from doing evil, both in deed or in thought. The thought of such people is also considered a deed, for thought exists in the world of action as well, and one must refrain from both deed and thought, whatever comes one's way. Without one's conscious doing should be totally ignored and be no cause for concern, and know that one must inevitably endure all this. For this is the key to complete repentance, passing through the same places and situations through which one had passed before, but this time acting in a different way and subduing one's evil inclination, refraining from doing what one had done before, whether in deed or in thought. This is the essence of complete repentance. Number 3, we have already spoken about the countless advances and backslides that one must endure before meriting complete service of God. Even all the great tzaddikim endured all this, nanach, nachman, meuman. The main thing is to be very strong in one's resolve and to hold on to the service of God forever, and not to be distracted by any mundane issues, and never desisting from serving God even if one endures every possible backslide in the world. One must strengthen oneself in the service of God as much as possible. The main thing is never to despair, but to always begin anew, as if one had never begun before to serve God, but is only beginning now. One must always begin anew, again and again, and sometimes one must begin anew several times in one day. Number 4, even if one has been praying and entreating and begging profusely to merit coming near to serving God, yet it seems that no one is paying attention or even listening at all, but that one is being repelled in all ways from serving God, as if one's service is not wanted at all, causing one to lose one's resolve and become lax in serving God. Nevertheless, one should be very ashamed. For doubting God's attributes. God is certainly compassionate and merciful, and certainly wants to draw one near. And one should therefore redouble one's efforts and strengthen one's will to start anew at all times. Number 5, according to each individual's spiritual level, the more one wants to enter the service of God, the more the evil inclination surges up to challenge him. It's like two people wrestling with each other. When one of them sees that the other is gaining strength against him, he summons all his might to overcome him. Thus, the reason why the forces of evil challenge a person more than usual is because they see that some good is beginning to awaken in the person, and the evil therefore rises against him more intensely. Therefore, one must be clever and wage war with strategies in order to constantly overcome the evil. Number 6, one may sometimes feel that it is very unlikely that one will merit the future life, since one is so distant from God. Nevertheless, one should be strong and courageous in one's resolve to draw near, always longing and yearning for God, doing whatever one can in the service of God with joy, and being willing to serve God for one's entire life, even without reward in the future life. And even if one feels that one will go to hell, one is still obligated to do one's part and continue serving God all that one can. Snatching and doing some mitzvah, learning Torah, or praying. And God will do what is good in His eyes. Number 7, even if one has not merited serving God, as long as one still yearns for Him, one has reason to strengthen and encourage oneself very much from this alone. As in, strengthen yourselves and be courageous of heart, all who hope in God. One should not be discouraged by anything in the world, for the very worst thing is despair. Each one must encourage the other not to be discouraged by anything in the world. And though one knows the truth, about oneself, one should strengthen the other, for it is easier to strengthen another than to strengthen oneself, because a prisoner cannot free himself. One may know how far one is from God's service, but by preventing another from falling and rather strengthening him with all sorts of encouragement to restore his soul, one may also merit returning to serving God. Number 8, there are people who begin to serve God but then fall away. Their temporary closeness is also precious in God's eyes, despite whatever happens to them afterwards. Part 3, number 1, one searching and seeking until one finds in oneself some good points with which to uplift and strengthen oneself in God's service, draws down all the rectifications made by the priests, performing their service, the Levites standing on their platform, and the Jewish people in their positions, besides all the rectifications effected by the sacrifices and the incense offering. Number 2, the light of the infinite shines even at the very lowest levels, only that it is very hidden and covered by many garments. Anyone, though, who wants to attach himself to God can do so in any place. About which the verse says, happy is he who does not forget you, and the man who takes strength in you. Great effort and encouragement is needed for this. And the lower the level, the more one must strengthen oneself, for even in the darkness of hell, one can draw the light of the infinite upon oneself, by closing one's eyes and totally surrendering oneself to God. This is alluded to in the verse, though I walk through the valley of death, I will not fear, for you are with me, and though I sit in darkness, God is a light to me. Number 3, it is important for everyone to know that whenever some spark of godliness begins to shine within, or if one is aroused with some new inspiration for God, the forces of evil rise against one that much more. One must be very firm not to fall or be discouraged by this. Even if it happens thousands of times, one must simply strengthen oneself with the torah, endeavoring to draw down new, true Torah insights. Even one who does not merit this should at least strengthen himself to study the Torah with new enthusiasm, and fulfill it with simplicity and innocence, not veering from its ways. Though one's enthusiasm may cause one to yearn to be holy and to completely abstain from the mundanities of this world, as indeed would be fitting, and if nevertheless one's evil inclination is overwhelmingly challenging, precisely now more than ever one must not give up completely because of this. Rather, one must strengthen oneself to at least remain within the basic path of the torah, and to fulfill the verse, do not be overly righteous and do not be overly wicked, meaning that one should not become overly wicked for having been unsuccessful in trying to be overly righteous when one follows this path firmly. One will proceed securely and be able to rouse oneself to God at all times, closing one's eyes to this world and surrendering oneself to God, if one merits truly surrendering oneself, entirely detaching oneself from this world, as is the ideal good. But if not, one should at least not be discouraged by this, and rather strengthen oneself to be an upright person with complete simplicity, following the ways of the holy Torah. For the Torah breaks and negates all the evil forces that want to overcome us. Number 4, one who wants to draw close to God must always seek Him wherever one finds oneself, binding and elevating that place to the aspect of the on place, that is, to God, who is the place of the world. One then merits truly serving God, and there is no place in which one will be unable to do this. Even if one's sins have brought one down to some bad place, even to a very lowly, gross, and filthy place, one nevertheless must remember that God is the place of the world, and He contains within Himself a place for each and every individual. Therefore, it is absolutely impossible to fall away from God, since from wherever one is, one can return to God as and you will seek out God from wherever one is. In the name of the Baal Shem Tov, the Ketei Lochas is 3:9. Number 5, all human deeds are done within time and space, which is where the forces of evil have their main hold, but God is above time and space. Everything is good, and the forces of evil have no hold. Therefore everything is sweetened, as in, if I ascend to heaven, there you are. They are fashioned over the course of many days, but to Him they are one. That is, there is no time or space. That is, there is no time or space to which one may escape, or in which one should despair of finding God. That is, there is no time or space to which one may escape, or in which one should despair of finding God. All places in the world are within Him, and He gives life to all the places and spiritual levels, and the same with time. Therefore, one can find God at all times and in all places, for space and time themselves are all from God. Therefore, through repentance, one can draw near to God and rise above space and time. Number 6, the main way to deal with all the confusions, lusts, and unwanted and foreign thoughts that hound a person and confuse him, especially during prayer, causing one great suffering, is patience, which is an aspect of faith. That is, one must have complete faith in God and in the true tzaddikim and upright ones, the nach meuman, and his students, and his true students, students, strengthening oneself in his holy service and never becoming discouraged, concerned, or troubled. And never becoming discouraged, concerned, or troubled by any confusion or uncertainty that the forces of evil want to create in one's mind. As if all hope were lost, one must pay no heed to this at all. One must pay no heed to this at all, but rather strengthen oneself greatly. For there is absolutely no cause for despair. Whatever one's condition, even if one has experienced a particular downfall countless times, there is still absolutely no cause for despair, and one must strengthen oneself and start anew again and again, and never fall into the senility, the senility of the forces of evil. All spiritual falls are an aspect of the senility of the forces of evil. When it seems to a person that one has already become entrenched in one's sins and deeds to the point that it seems impossible any longer to free oneself from them. But the truth is that one must know and believe that every single day and at every time and moment, one has the power to renew oneself and become a truly new creation. God makes new creations every day, and no hour is identical to another. Therefore, one must strengthen oneself and always begin anew, sometimes beginning anew several times a day, no matter for how long this will go on. No matter how bleak one's situation, one must remind oneself of God at every moment and hour, completely forgetting whatever happened beforehand, and truly starting anew from this point to whatever extent one is able, and not being concerned at all about any confusion or uncertainty. All this is an aspect of patience. Patience to endure all the confusions and obstacles, and to not pay heed of it to anything or be discouraged by whatever one is enduring. Rather, one must strengthen oneself in God as much as one can. For God is full of mercy at all times. His kindnesses are endless, and His mercies are without bounds. Number 7, the only reason most people are distant from God is because of setbacks and despair. Most have tried several times to begin serving God, only to then fall back into their old ways. Each one to his own. Some of them were inspired to begin anew, perhaps several times, but when they saw that they always fell back, they gave up on themselves. However, this is all the work of the evil inclination, which is called old and foolish, sikeles rabu, and which wants to throw a person into senility and weakness. And if one is too entrenched in one's sins and deeds to the point of being unable to change, as if one is too entrenched in one's sins and deeds to the point of being unable to change. But the truth is that one is a new creation every day. As we recite in the morning blessings, so one must strengthen oneself at all times and look upon oneself as if one were born this very day, and is receiving the Torah today anew. Number 8, God and His Torah are endless and limitless. Are endless and limitless, and just as spiritual advancement is meaningless before God's greatness, for there is always higher, so is spiritual backside meaningless. Thus, no matter how low one has fallen, there is always a lower state, and since there is a lower state, one must strengthen oneself not to fall any further. The main source of strength comes through the power of the great tzaddikim, meuman, and his true students, who never remained at one level, but constantly rose higher, and even when they reached the highest levels, even a very awesome and sublime level, they were never complacent with themselves, but said, since God is infinite, who knows what more one can reach in this world, so they always began anew, until they indeed reached ever higher levels. So there is hope for all the fallen ones through the power of these tzaddikim, nanach, meuman. And there is absolutely no cause for despair, though one may feel that it is impossible to rise from a specific backslide. Who knows God's kindness? God possesses such kindness that one can ascend even from those places, and not even a single cry that one cries out even from the lowest depths of hell is ever lost, regardless of what happens afterwards. The tzaddikim, nachman, and his students and his true students and true students understand that just as one can never really come higher in respect to God, Oh, you understand that? He said you can understand that, nachman. One understand that just as one can never really come higher in respect to God, so can one never really go lower to the point of not being able to return. Never come higher. Really come higher, maybe. That just as one can really come higher and always really come higher, I don't know. That just as one can really come higher, never really come higher in respect to God, so can one never really go lower to the point of not being able to return indeed. Of not being able to return indeed, all is one. The more that the tzaddik nachman rises to a higher level and attains greater perception of God's greatness, so does he perceive more of God's kindness, which is God's main greatness, for the trait of kindness is called greatness. Therefore, those tzaddikim and nachman who merit reaching ever greater perception of God's greatness, which is the greatness of his kindness, merit perceiving that there is actually no such thing as falling. There is no such thing as falling, and there is absolutely no cause for despair. They continually reach higher perceptions of such kindness that are the essence of God's greatness, opening the way for everyone to return. Therefore, even those on a very low spiritual level, or even those who have fallen into complete wickedness, as long as one is still alive and can still move a single limb, one must have patience and always hope for salvation, always endeavoring to begin anew as best as one can. And no matter what the circumstances, no movement of holiness or any sigh, cry, or yearning for holiness is ever lost, for God will not abandon forever. And his mercies and kindnesses are endless, number 9, a backslide or a regression is sometimes for the purpose of advancing. The main purpose of a backslide is in order to strengthen oneself and begin anew, renewing one's vitality and mind. Renewing one's vitality and mind. This is the main work, constantly living a new life in one's service of God.